their work complete, are headed back to the lab.
Testing. 1, 2.
Diane, it's 4:28 a.m.
You should have something for us by now.
Hello, everybody. Robbie here from Major League Hacking. Very, very excited to be here with you today. We're going to be looking at using AWS, that's Amazon Web Services, setting up a database, setting up a web server, all of that good stuff. We're running this challenge because we heard from lots of you that you really enjoyed our live challenges during Local Hack Day build. So throughout the month of March, we're actually running challenges like this pretty much every day, I think. If not every day, then most days. So we're really, really excited to be doing this, and we welcome your feedback on it as well. Tell us what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying. Now, I do have a couple of logistics things that we need to go through before we jump into the exciting technical stuff. I posted the links here in Discord, so let me go ahead and screen share my Discord real quick, and then we'll walk through how to register together. Just forgive me while I'm navigating my hundreds of different windows here. Okay, screen share. We'll go for Discord. Awesome. So you can see my Discord screen. If we head to the March Challenges Announcements channel, you will see this little post I just wrote. The first step is to head to this URL, check in on the March Challenges page. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm now realizing I should probably share my whole screen rather than just Discord, because Discord does not have a built-in web browser. Give me a quick second and I'll set that one up. Amazing. So here's Discord. Let's go ahead, check into March challenges. Bring you to this page. We're just going to hit login and register. It's going to invite you to sign up for an MLH account, so you need to do that. If you've already got one, you can click on sign in at the bottom. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to sign in with my MLH account. Okay, so we're logged in. Let's hit register and check in. Perfect. So that's step one done. And then the second one is register and check in on the MySQL on AWS page. So that is this one here. We'll go ahead, we'll click on register and check in. Perfect. So we've done our 2 check-in processes. Make sure you do that. That's how we know that you folks are actually enjoying and attending these sessions. And I'm going to put those URLs on the screen for you as well. Let me just type those up. There we go. So head to hackpack/March challenges, then hackpack/MySQL on AWS. Now we've done that. What we're going to be walking through today is these 2 tutorials basically that AWS has. The first one is about just this one, create and connect to a MySQL database. So in this tutorial, we'll learn how to create an environment to run our database, get it up and running, and then at the end, we'll delete it as well. And everything in here is in the free tier. The second one is we'll go a bit further, so we'll actually build out a web server as well, and the VPC and all this stuff we need. So we'll start with the first one, which is kind of the easier one, and then move on to a bit more advanced stuff. And I would love it if you're here and you're watching along, just post in the chat, just say hello, just say where you're calling from, where you're watching from rather. So I'm Robbie from London in the UK. If you're watching from somewhere else, please say hello as well. Let's go ahead and get started here with this first tutorial, create and connect to a MySQL database. So we'll read through this one together. In this tutorial, learn how to create an environment to run your MySQL database. We call this an instance. We'll connect to the database, and then we'll delete it afterwards. We'll do this using Amazon Relational Database Service. So Amazon RDS is a managed service for basically hosting a database in the cloud without you needing to worry about things like installing software, patching stuff, operating systems. You don't have to deal with any of that. It just gives you a database. It's telling us here, when you click here, the AWS Management Console will open in a new browser window. So you can keep this guide open. When this screen loads, find RDS under Database and click to open the Amazon RDS console. Yes, that is a great question. Can we have a link to the site you're on? Let me put that one here. We're following this tutorial. Hopefully you can see that link whether you're watching on Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook. Let's go ahead and open this one up, and I'm going to split this straight into 2 separate windows. It's going to invite me to create an AWS account. And I don't think I have an AWS account. We're walking through this tutorial together. This is the first time I've gone through it, so this is going to be a learning opportunity for all of us. Let's go ahead and create a new AWS account. Now, I do have somewhere like a burner email address, which I can use. Probably burner 800. And we'll choose a password as well. And I need an account name. Let's go ahead and call it Robbie MLH March Challenge. Continue. Just for personal stuff, you can contact me. I'm in the United. Let's put down MLH's office. Should we look up the MLH address? Sure, I've hit this problem on on live streams in the past. There is a way. There is somewhere that I have it. Major League Hacking. There's the address. Okay, so we got Major League Hacking PVC Inc. There we go. Major League Hacking. Address is PO 438. And then it's 149 East 23rd Street. These US address formats are always a bit confusing to read. East 23rd Street, New York. New York. What is the postal code? 10159. Let's skip the phone number box. What do you think? Amazing. Let's go ahead and put down the MLH code of conduct phone number. There you go. I'll put down North America. +1 409 202 6060. Continue. It's not valid. Okay, let's try that. Perfect. Now, I love when we have to put in card details. Even though we're going to live on the free tier, you do still need to put card details in here because of how it verifies the account. So I'm actually going to slide this onto a different screen while I fill this out. It's probably not a good idea for me to stream my credit card details on Twitch. I think we're all in agreement there. Let's do. I'm going to fill this one out. I have way too many cards. I know this is not the most exciting bit, but you know, you got to do what you got to do. Okay, so we did that bit. We're now on to confirm your identity. Again, I'm going to put in my mobile number here. And as I do that, I'm going to slide this window back off screen so you can't see my mobile number. Okay, now we have the exciting time of waiting for my text to come through. 9757. Continue. Perfect. Let's take ahead with the free plan. Enterprise level support for $15,000 a month. Amazing. Complete sign up. Brilliant. And we're now in the AWS console. We'll go ahead and log in. Oh gosh, BD644F. I need to grab that password. I think we're in. Are we in? We're in. We're in the AWS console. Fantastic. So now that we're here, we're going to go ahead and go to RDS. So we'll just go to search and we'll search for RDS. That's this service, the Managed Relational Database Service. Fire this one up. And then it says in this step, we'll use Amazon RDS to create a MySQL database instance with db.t2micro DB instance class. Essentially what this means, this is the type of instance that's being created. So when we create the database, they're actually starting up like a virtual machine running on a physical server somewhere in a data center. And the DB T2 micro is basically the type of server that's being used. So T2 is like second generation. For T is, I can't remember what T is, but it means something. A micro is like fairly small. It's basically the free option. So you can actually get free cloud hosting just with like a T2 micro instance. As it says here, and you get 20 gigabytes of storage and automatic backups with a retention period of a day as well. So that's great. Now that we're in the RDS console, let's select the region we want. In my case, rather than being in Ohio, I'm going to go for Europe, London. That's EU West 2. That's the closest data center to me. And it generally makes sense to choose the region that's closest to you, but it doesn't really matter just for the sake of this challenge. Now we're in the region we want. We're going to go ahead and choose Create Database. Okay. We now have the options to select our engine for this tutorial. We'll go through standard create, and then we'll click the MySQL icon. So that's this one. Leave the default value of edition, which is MySQL Community, and engine version. So we'll leave that on version 8.0.20. You will now configure your database instance. The list below shows you the example settings you can use for this tutorial. Okay, let's go through this then. Let's keep that on free tier. For a name, what name should we give it? For this tutorial, we'll name it, there we go, they've chosen a name for us. RDS MySQL 10-min tutorial. And let's go ahead and put MLH, and we'll put lowercase t. Credentials. So this name is literally just the name of like it's not the name of the database itself, it's the name of the instance, like the machine that runs and hosts the database. So we'll go ahead for our master username, we'll just use master username. Password, I'm going to pick an exciting password. Go. And for the instance class, this is the important bit. We don't want to get charged, so we're going to keep it on the T2 micro. That's what it mentioned earlier. So if we're on, all these other options are basically not on the free tier. That's why these are grayed out. So we're going to stick with that T2 micro. For storage, let's leave it on general purpose SSD. And then allocated storage, we'll leave it on the 20 gigabytes. That's the free plan. We can go quite a bit higher, up to 16 terabytes, it says here. But we'll leave that at 20 gigabytes at the minute. That's more than enough. Let's see what we got here. Storage auto-scaling. If your workload is cyclical or unpredictable, you would enable storage auto-scaling to enable RDS to automatically scale up your storage when needed. So that's really interesting. If it looks like we're going to run out of storage on our database, we can actually tell it to just allocate more storage automatically, which is a really useful feature if you've got a database in production. But for the sake of this tutorial, we don't need that. So we'll go ahead and uncheck that one. Multi-AZ deployment. Note you have to pay for multi-AZ deployment. We selected the free tier, so let's go ahead and just make sure that is not enabled. Now we're in the connectivity section. So this is an important bit because it's how we provide information that RDS needs to launch our MySQL database instance. So let's go ahead and use basically the same settings they're using here. VPC is well, it says here, the virtual networking environment. So it's basically the cloud, the IP address range, this kind of stuff that it lives in. And we'll talk about VPCs a little bit later on, probably in the next tutorial. But let's just leave this on default VPC. Subnet group, again, leave that on default. Now for public access, we want to select yes. And the reason for that is so that I can connect to it from my personal laptop, which I'm working on here. So that's on VPC security groups. We're going to go ahead and create a new security group is what it's telling us. So this will create a new security group that will allow connection from the IP address of the device that you're currently using to the database created. So what I have to do, everything on AWS is very locked down by default. So I actually have to give myself permission to access the database from my home IP address. So we'll hit create new, and we'll give it a name. We'll just call it RDS security group. Availability zone, no preference. We could go with A, B, or C. It doesn't really matter. And then, what's this saying here? Something about the port. Do we have a port option? Here, an additional configuration. So we'll leave that one as default, 3306. Any other options we've got here? Authentication we'll do as password, additional configuration, initial database name. So we gave a name earlier, and that was for the name of the instance, the actual machine that's being created. And then on that, I want to actually create a database within MySQL. Let's go ahead and choose sample database, something like that. Parameter group is saying, oh, I need an underscore there. Sample database. Parameter group is saying leave as default. Option group the same, leave as default. Encryption, it's not even mentioned here. Backup, and we said we get 1 day, didn't we? Was the free option. So we'll put that on 1 day. Backup window, no preference. Like you could select a period in time when it should take a backup, but we don't really care when that is. We missed anything. Enhanced monitoring, make sure that one is off. We don't want that because otherwise you've got to pay for it. Maintenance, auto minor version upgrade is saying we should have on. Maintenance window, don't care. Deletion protection, make sure it's cleared, and that way we can actually delete it at the end. So now it's saying the RDS free tier is available to you for 12 months. Each calendar month, the free tier will allow you to use the following resources for free. 750 hours of Amazon RDS in a single AZ, so we didn't enable multi-AZ. DB T.2 micro instance, which is the type we selected. 20 gigabytes of general purpose storage is what we've selected, and 20 gigabytes for automated backup storage and stuff like that. So that looks like we're good to go. Let's click on Create Database. Brilliant. So that is now creating our database. We can see that here, status is creating. We'll scroll down a bit. And it can take a few minutes to create the database. If I hit refresh, yeah, it's still creating. So what we'll do is, in the meantime, we'll play some Chrome Dino just to pass the time. How do I actually start playing this? Press space to start the game. All right, are we watching? Let's go. Last time I played this on stream, it was incredibly stressful. Oh. Okay, we're at 104. That's not a good start. I was about to celebrate hitting 100. Okay, 40. It's the kind of thing where you've actually got to concentrate a lot. I don't know if you can hear those beeps, but they're really stressful. It beeps every time I jump, and then when we hit a multiple of 100, it's like a really happy beep. We're doing pretty well here, though. 300 and... Oh, no! I spoke too soon. Database. Still creating. We've got another couple of rounds, I think. Also, all of you who are following along, I'd love to get an understanding of where your kind of ability level is, what you're interested in. Like, have you created a MySQL database before? Have you worked with the cloud before? Post in the Twitch chat comments, YouTube comments, Facebook, wherever you're watching, and just tell us what you're interested in. Tell us what you already know. Oh man, I'm so bad at this. So. Still creating that database. This is legit, like, stressful. I'm so bad at this. Okay. I just want to beat my high score. 339 is not a score that I can be proud of. That's 100. 200. 300. We're close to my high score. New high score. I don't think I've ever been so stressed. 400. Look at this. We're on a roll. Last time I said that, I died immediately. Ah! The bird. I got freaked out by the bird. Oh, man. Oh, look. We're on to backing up. Database is nearly done. Let's do another round while we wait for that to back up. So as a fun fact, actually, it says, earlier we were selecting like the availability zone. So we selected single availability zone. And essentially, within each region on AWS, you have availability zones. It's a little bit like subregions. So we selected EU West 2, which is London as a region. And London has 3 availability zones. So that's 3 separate data centers, which are always kind of working to be in sync. The idea is they are geographically fairly close to each other. It might be a few miles apart, right? But they're not a continent apart. Basically, your application can be hosted in multiple availability zones in order to make sure it stays highly available, this kind of stuff. We selected single availability Z, so we said just put it in one of those 3 availability zones because we didn't want to pay for which is one that you just pick randomly out of those 3 options. I'm getting much better at this game. It's a new high score, 500. Let me reload the page. Okay, I think we're good to go. Status still backing up. We can probably start moving on. On the console. So that's what we're seeing in a minute. This is the list of all the different instances we've got. It will have a status of creating until the instance is created and ready for use. When it changes to available, you can connect to a database on the database instance. Feel free to move on to the next step as you wait for the instance to become available. So let's have one more look because it's still, there we go. So that's now fully available, which is fantastic. The next step is to download a SQL client. That's what it's telling us. Now it's recommending we use MySQL Workbench. I actually don't want to use MySQL Workbench. I prefer an application called SQL Pro. And that's this one. The SQL Pro is free. It's open source. It's a really great tool for just interacting with a database. So I already have this one installed. You can just go ahead and download it. I think it's just for Mac, actually. So if you want a Windows one, MySQL Workbench is a good option. So we've downloaded that, and now we're going to connect to the database. And again, rather than using MySQL Workbench, I'm going to use SQL Pro, but it's basically doing the same thing. So we'll fire up SQL Pro. Okay. A dialog appears. Enter the host name, the port, the username, and the password. So we can get all of that from the AWS console. Let's just click on this. So we've got an endpoint. That's our host name. Our username was, what was it, like master username? Yeah. Password was the password I chose earlier. Database will leave blank. Port 3306 is there by default. If I hit test connection, connection succeeded. And that's good because we set up our security group earlier to allow my computer and my IP address to access the database. Let's hit connect. And we hit an error. Fantastic. Let's refresh databases. Okay, let's assume this is a one-off and try it again after restarting the application. do a quick check for updates as well. Okay, let's try connecting to that one again. Hopefully it doesn't crash this time around. This connection is all good. Connect. That is weird. Don't know what's happening. I think we're going to have to cave and download MySQL Workbench. That's okay. We can do it together. Go to this page and actually, do I already have it installed? Doesn't look like it. Download MySQL Workbench. I'm on Mac, so I'm going to download that one. And just click on no thanks to start my download. How big is it? 100 meg. That's okay. I can live with that. I did a speed test earlier. I normally get, on a good day, I get like 400, 500 down, and I got 1 gigabit per second download speed. Absolute madness. And that's on 5G. I don't use normal broadband. I have a 5G router. Crazy stuff. So we'll just wait for this to open and install here. Okay, drag it the applications folder. You know what's always impressed me is the compression they do in like DMGs. Like on Mac, I've never seen anything else that's as well compressed as these. Like you can download something that's like 200 megabytes, and then when it's extracted, it's like 500. It's really impressive levels of compression. I think it's actually taken longer to extract here than than to download. Nearly done. This is definitely slower to extract than it was to download. As a reminder, if you have not checked in yet, please go ahead and do that. The URL's on the screen, hackpack/March challenges and hackpack/MySQL on AWS. You need to go to that, and that helps us know whether you're actually attending this session and helps us know what's important. So we've downloaded MySQL Workbench. Let's actually launch it. MySQL Workbench. Amazing. Let's just open it anyway. Is that opening? Who knows? That quit as well. That is bizarre. Let's try that once more. Okay, and let's try SQL Pro again. It was, I keep forgetting that username. Master username. Connect. God, we're kind of connected, but if I try to run a query, then it just doesn't work. Like, I think is it show databases? Is that the query? It's databases. SQL list all databases. What is a query? Is it? It's not SQL Server. It's just MySQL list all databases. Show databases. I thought that's what it was. It says run. Huh. I mean, our database exists, but it's a bit odd that I can't connect to it. Let's quit that. Anyway, we can see that it's available. So it's a bit frustrating we can't actually get into it and have a look around. But I'll tell you what I'm thinking is essentially this tutorial is telling us how to create an instance. And then once we're into the instance and we're using MySQL Workbench, basically it's saying just poke around and see what you can find. and then delete it. So I think what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and actually finish up this tutorial, just move on to the deletion step. And then we'll jump into the slightly more advanced one where we're doing more than just creating the database, we're doing a web server and stuff like that as well. And so it's always best practice to shut down or delete resources you're not using, especially in the cloud, because otherwise you'll get charged forever until the end of time. So let's go ahead and delete this instance. It says, go back to your console, select databases, choose the instance you want to delete, and then from actions, just click on delete. So that's what we're going to do. We do not create a final snapshot. It's not necessary. And then it says, I acknowledge that upon instance deletion, automated backups and stuff will no longer be available. I'm going to tick this, type delete me. Not doing a final snapshot because there's just nothing interesting in this instance. We'll hit delete. And then I think that actually takes a bit of time to delete as well. Yeah, it says it here. That's because, like I said, it's not just a simple database. It's actually a whole instance running MySQL. So this takes a bit of time to delete. But we did it. That was the first one. Really exciting. Let's move on to our next one, creating a web server and an Amazon RDS database. So that's this one here. I'm going to post the link in the chat as well. Tutorial for second part. I just posted that on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. The comment should come through in a second. So this one's telling us that this tutorial is going to help us install an Apache web server with PHP and create a MySQL database. So the web server runs on an Amazon EC2 instance using Amazon Linux. So this is like an actual virtual machine in the cloud. We can SSH into it. We've got a terminal we can work with, stuff like that. And then the MySQL database, it's just an RDS database instance like we made. Both the EC2 instance and the database run in a virtual private cloud on the Amazon VPC service. Now, it's saying here, there's no charge for creating an account. By completing this tutorial, you might incur costs for the resources you use. You can delete these after you complete the tutorial if they are no longer needed. I'm going to try my absolute best to try and keep stuff on the free plan where possible. And it's also saying we should use Amazon Linux and not Ubuntu. And that's not to do with the machine you're working on. It's the actual EC2 instance, the virtual machine in the cloud that you create. Let's jump here into, what's it saying? We'll specify VPC subnets and stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. Let's jump straight into step one. Complete the tasks in tutorial. Create a VPC for use of the DB instance. Before you begin this tutorial, make sure you have a VPC. So these are kind of the wrong way around, right? This should happen before this. Let's start with this one, 1A. To create a VPC, if you don't have an elastic IP address to associate with a network address translation gateway, allocate one now. I think we can get away with actually not doing that bit. Let's just jump on to step 2. And the reason I want to try and skip it is I think you pay for these elastic IP addresses. But let's jump to step 2, which is go to the VPC service. This is where we create a virtual private cloud, which is where we set up the IP addresses. And basically, it's the virtual network that we want all our resources, our database, our web server to exist in. So now we're here. Let's go ahead and launch the VPC wizard. And we'll make sure we're in the right region. I'm still in London. We want a VPC with public and private subnets. So that's this one. And we'll click select. And we've got to fill out a bunch of stuff here. So for our first one, we'll just use 10.0.0.0/16. And this is what's called cider block. This /16 basically means you can have 10.0.anything.anything between 0 and 255. There's actually a whole bunch of reading you can do about cider notation, which stands for, here you go, classless interdomain routing. It's an easy way of defining IP address ranges. So we'll go for that. We'll leave this one IPv6 as no block. VPC name is tutorial VPC. The public subnet cider is O/24. So /24 says just that final bit on the end can be .anything. After like 0, 1, 2, and 255, which is why this is set to 251. Availability zone is actually telling us to pick one this time. So instead of US West, I'm going to choose EU West 2A. The public subnet name will go, tutorial public subnet. And for the private subnet, we'll go 10.0.1.0/24. So all the stuff in the public subnet is going to be 10.0.0. something. Everything in the private subnet is going to be 10.0.1. something. Availability zone, we'll choose the same one, 2A, and for the private subnet, we'll call it tutorial private subnet. Elastic IP, I think we do actually need to do this, which is a shame. Let's go ahead and set that one up then. I'm going to open a whole new tab. In EC2. We'll actually come back to EC2 in a bit, but for now we're just in here for elastic IPs. And we'll go allocate elastic IP address from Amazon's pool of IP addresses. Allocate. Easy peasy. So we've made that. Let's go back down here and see if we can search. Okay, here's our elastic IP address, and this is a public IP address. Key pair name. I don't really see anything about key pairs, do you? Nope. Okay, skip that. Endpoints, skip that. Enable DNS host names, yes. Hardware tenancy, default. If you choose dedicated, it's very expensive. So let's leave that on default. And we'll go ahead and click on create VPC. And the nice thing about the VPC wizard is that it actually creates a bunch of different, all the different resources for you. So with the VPC, you have subnets, you have a route table, all this stuff. And the VPC wizard does all the hard work for you there. Now this is telling us it might take a few minutes, so we'll jump back to our old friend, the T-Rex Chrome Dino game. Let's see if I can beat my high score of 566. These beeps are like, they're stressful, you know. Tempted to also do a speed typing test. Might do that in a bit if I'm up to it. It's quite a workout for my fingers, but I usually get some pretty good scores, if I do say so myself. Unlike the Chrome Dino game, which apparently I'm just really rubbish at. Keep on going here. You know, I feel like sometimes I'm best at this game when I'm just kind of doing it absentmindedly, when I'm just chatting. If I concentrate too much, I stress myself out. But these are not some bad. These are some scores that are not terrible now. 579. And I presume everyone knows this, but the Chrome Dino game is the game that comes up if you're using Google Chrome and you've got no network connection. On that page where it's like, hey, you're not connected to the internet, you can press space and it starts an actual Chrome Dino game. Maybe we'll play it in actually Google Chrome in a minute, next time I die. How's AWS doing? Still going, still creating the NAT gateway. 486, right, let's switch to Chrome. I do actually have Chrome open here. I think you can just go do Chrome Dino. Have I made that up? There it is. Look, the Chrome Dino game. Press space to play. Right on cue, the VPC's done. Yeah, I got a good high score there, 2,393. 67. Okay, I think it's time to quit the Chrome Dino game and move back to our tutorial. So we've made the VPC. That's fantastic. So that was the first bit. Create a VPC with those subnets and then create additional subnets, which is this one. You must have either 2 private or 2 public subnets available to create a database subnet group for a database instance to use in a VPC. Because the instance is private, let's add a second private subnet. So in our VPC, we're going to head to subnets on the left and then create subnet. On the create subnet page, set these values. This is the VPC that we created, tutorial VPC. We need to give it a name. Let's call it tutorial private subnet 2. And then our availability zone, we're going to choose, it tells us to choose a different one. So if the first one we went with 2A, I'm going to go with 2B this time. Our CIDR block is 10.0.2.24. So again, /24 means just the final bit can be varied. And we'll click create subnet. Perfect. And then it's telling us to ensure the second private subnet that you created uses the same root table as the first private subnet. Go to subnets, choose the first private subnet that we made. So that's this one. I'm actually going to rename that to private subnet 1. Then below the list of subnets, choose the root table tab. And then in the list of subnets, and note the value. So it's this one ending in 3D. Is the root table used by subnet 1. And then select the second subnet. So we'll go here, go to root table, and that's using 3D as well. So that's great. We don't need to make any changes here. Now we need to make a security group for our public web server. So we're in VPC. We'll head to security groups on the left. Where is that? Do you see that? Choose VPC dashboard. And then security groups here. Oh, there it is under security. And we'll click on create security group. We're going to go with tutorial security group. Description is security group for tutorial. The VPC, we want to make sure we choose our tutorial VPC, not the default one. And we're going to add an inbound rule. So that's using my IP address. So we can actually set it up. So I'm going to skip this one because Amazon could do this for us. In the inbound rules, choose add rule. We want to enable SSH access. Let me zoom out a bit. Yeah, so it's supposed to be like wide like this. And then we choose the source as my IP. So that's actually going to populate with my current public IP that I've got at home. So we'll put Robbie's home IP address. And then we'll click add rule. And we're also going to allow HTTP access from anywhere. And that's what this will do here with the source. It's anywhere. So allow all incoming HTTP traffic. Create the security group, choose create security group. And then note the, oh gosh, what did I do wrong here? I think we're not allowed to use apostrophes. Do that. Perfect. So we've made that security group. It ends in D10. So remember that's the one we need to work with. And then it's telling us to make another security group for the private instance. So we'll go back to security groups. We'll create a new security group. And this is tutorial database security group. Security group for database instance for tutorial. Our VPC is the tutorial VPC we chose earlier. And again, we're going to add some more inbound rules. So we'll add an inbound rule. A security group is like a firewall, right? You just specify the stuff you're allowed. And security groups, by default, deny everything. So you need to go and explicitly allow the traffic you want. So in our case, we want to allow MySQL traffic. So we'll go, type is MySQL. And all that does is it pre-selects the protocol and the port range for us. And then we want to select the source as actually the name of that security group that we set up, which is the one ending in 10, tutorial security group. So we're allowing traffic from that security group into this security group. Say allow traffic from, what was the name of the other security group? Just like was it the public one? Yeah, from public web server security group. Okay, we'll go ahead and click on create security group. Now we need to create a database subnet group. So again, we're just following through this tutorial and it's guiding us through each step. Open the RDS console. So we're no longer in VPC, we're in RDS. And then it's saying in the navigation pane, choose subnet groups. That's here. Create a database subnet group. So here's the default one. We're going to go ahead and create another one. Call it tutorial database subnet group. A VPC is our tutorial VPC. And then we're going to go ahead and click on availability zones. So we need to choose multiple availability zones for the way a subnet group works. So we're going to choose 2A and 2B. And again, the tutorial is using US West 2. We're using EU West 2. Doesn't make much difference really. Just choose the one that's closest to you. Use the US one if you prefer. It's fine. That's our availability zones. And then for subnets, choose the subnets for 0/24, 1, and 2. So that was 0, 1, and 2. If you've enabled a local zone, you can choose an availability zone group. In this case, choose the availability zone group. I don't think we need to think about that. Let's just skip that. We'll go ahead and click on create. So now, oh, I misspelled it. Do you reckon I can change the name of it? I don't think we can, you know. I think it's stuck. Edit. Nope, name can't be changed. Well, that's what we're rolling with for now because it's just a tutorial. So we've made that. You can click the database subnet group to see the details, which is what we've just done, including the subnets it's associated with. Nice. Let's go back. So we've done 1A, 1B. Oh, we actually did C, D, and E as well. So that was all part of that same tutorial. Now we're going to create a database instance, and hopefully this bit is familiar because it's basically the same as this step, but a little bit different because it needs all this VPC stuff we did earlier. So we've just set up our VPC with security groups and subnets and things. We're going to go ahead now, go to RDS to create a new MySQL database instance. Let's go RDS. So we're loading up the RDS service. Make sure we're in the region we want. So we're still in London. They're using US West Oregon, which is US West 2. But we'll stick with London. In the navigation pane, choose databases, click create database. And then we're going through these steps again, right? And we'll go for standard create. We'll go for MySQL. In the template section, choose free tier. Giving it a name, so we'll go tutorial database instance, and they've excitingly gone for a different user rather than master username. We're going for tutorial user. Don't want to auto-generate a password. I'm just going to choose a password. Okay, in the database instance size, we're going to select that T2 micro again, which is the free one. For storage, we're sticking with general purpose and 20 gigabytes. That's what it says here. Use the default values. Actually, let's turn off the auto scaling. We don't need that. In the connectivity section, open additional connectivity configuration. Set these values. So that's this bit. So the VPC we're going to select as our tutorial VPC. The subnet group is our tutorial DB subnet grew up. So I misnamed it earlier. Public access, this time we're leaving this on no, because we don't actually need to access the database ourselves. Only our web application needs to access it. So we'll leave that one on no. Existing security groups is we're going to choose an existing security group configured for private access, such as the one we made there. So let's choose that one and uncheck that one. And then remove other ones. Yep. Our port is 3306. And that's everything that we've just set up here. Now we need to make password is fine. Additional config is initial database name. So they're going for sample. Again, I'm just going to go sample DB. Default setting for all the other options. Okay, they want us to leave it on 7 days. Fine by me. And then choose create database. Let's do it. Creating a database. And again, last time this took a few seconds. This time we'll jump in and see what else we can do to make the time pass. So that one is creating. We'll wait for the status to show as available. In the connectivity and security section, view the endpoint and port. So let's jump over to that. And then we're on to this one. Create an EC2 instance and install a web server. So while that one is creating, let's move on to that final part, step 3. In this step, you create a web server to connect to the RDS database instance you created in Create a Database Instance. So we've just made this instance, it's still creating. We're now going to set up an actual web server, another virtual machine somewhere, to connect to this database. So we need to launch an instance. I'm going to leave RDS open and go back to EC2 here. And then on the dashboard, it's telling us to choose launch instance. Launch instance. And it's saying we should use Amazon Linux 2. So that's this one. And AMI is an Amazon machine image. So we're essentially launching or choosing the type of virtual machine we want to launch. Amazon Linux 2 is just like a version of Linux. There's a bunch of other versions, Red Hat and stuff like that. Ubuntu, actually Microsoft Windows Server as well. You could launch a Windows virtual machine. We're going to stick with Amazon Linux 2 because it's kind of the standard. It's cheap and cheerful and it works well. We're going to leave it on that T2 micro again. And it tells us here that's free tier eligible. And this page is interesting because, like, if you wanted a really powerful virtual machine, this is where you would choose. You know, you might go for like a T3A 2x large, you know, with 32 gigabytes of RAM and 8 cores. That's probably overkill for what we're trying to do here. So we'll stick with that T2 micro. Okay, next, configure instance details. So let's go here. On the configure instance details page, we're going with one instance. We don't want spot instances. Our network is our tutorial VPC. That's important. And the subnet is a public one. So let's go tutorial public subnet. Auto assign public IP, you're actually going to set to enable. And then for the rest, I think we can just leave that all fine. Yep, looks good. Okay, let's go to add storage. Keep the default values. So just a standard 8 gigabyte drive. I think you can actually get up to 30 gigs for free, but let's leave it at 8 for now. We'll go to add tags, and this is where we'll just give it a name. So we'll go name tutorial web server. Okay, configure security group. On the configure security group page, select an existing security group, and we want the tutorial security group. So there's the database security group, and then just like the general tutorial one. We'll go for this one. This allows incoming HTTP traffic from all IP addresses, and also SSH access from my personal home machine. So I can SSH into it. Let's go to review and launch. Okay, double check. We're launching Amazon Linux 2. It's a T2 micro. We're using our tutorial security group with these rules. And we set our VPC and our subnet to, I presume these are the right ones that I selected. And our storage is the 8 gigabytes general purpose SSD. And we've got tutorial web server as our name. Let's go ahead, click on launch. And it's going to invite us to select a key pair. Let's go ahead and create a new key pair. We'll call this tutorial key pair. And this is important because this is how we actually access our instance. This is how I'm going to SSH into it and authenticate against it. So we've given it a name, tutorial key pair. We'll click on download key pair. I'm going to save that. Let's put it in dev. We'll make a folder. We'll call it MySQL on AWS. Our key pair, it's a .pem file. Hit save. And it's really important that you do this and you download the key pair. If you don't download the key pair, you can't get the key pair back, and then you're a bit stuck because you can't access your machine. Now that we've got our key pair, we've downloaded the file. We'll go ahead and click on Launch Instances. And then as this is launching, we'll click here and see how it's doing. Again, that can be pending, so that can take a minute. But if we go back to RDS, this is probably nearly ready now. Wow, it's still backing up. Let's just reload the page, make sure that's still right. Okay, well, that's nearly done. But our instance is up and running. That's fantastic. Now that it's running, we can continue and we can actually connect to the machine. This is really exciting. Now, it's telling us here the tutorial is designed to work with MySQL 5.6. I think we used MySQL 8 when we set up our database instance, because that was the default option, wasn't it? Where would that be? Configuration? Yeah, 8.0.20. If you're using version 8, you must set the following parameters to the value specified in a parameter group. The default settings cause the connection to fail. I wonder if that's the problem we were facing earlier, you know. Let's go ahead and do this change. So we'll go to working with database parameter groups. Okay. How do I actually make a database parameter group? Okay, so in RDS, we'll go to parameter groups, create parameter group for version 8. The name, let's call it tutorial parameter group. I'll group correctly this time. We'll hit create. And now that we've created it, what was it we needed to do? Set the following parameters to these values. Let's open this up. Search for character set server, as that's defined. Okay. Let's edit that parameter and choose UTF-8. It's this one. Save changes there. And then collation server as well. Looks like we need to edit that. Wow, that's a big one. We're going for UTF-8 general CI. There's a lot of options here. So 2.8 general CI, that one. Okay, save changes. After you've reset the parameters, modify your database instance to use the parameter group. Okay, I'll cancel editing and then reboot the instance. So if I go back to databases, this must have created now. It's still backing up. Okay, let's go on to here. I think we can't actually modify it, until that's finished creating. Just looking through here how we can update that. Tell it to use the new parameter group. Associating it with an instance. Yeah, click modify. But we can't modify until it's created. So we'll reload and see if that's done yet. If not, we'll jump back and move on to some of the next stuff. Oh, perfect. That's now available. We'll hit modify. The modify page appears. Change database parameter group to, wow, where is this setting? This one, tutorial parameter group. Optional, choose apply immediately to apply the changes immediately. This can cause an outage. I'm feeling brave. Let's go ahead and just continue modify instance. Successfully modified. Has that made that change though? Is that good to go? Because it said we need to reboot it, right? Let's just click on it again and have a look. Our configuration. That's the option group with the parameter group. Is applying currently. I reload. I think we still need to restart our instance. I think it doesn't apply that change until we've actually rebooted it. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go to actions, reboot, YOLO. Let's do it. Confirm. Again, that might take a minute or two to reboot. So let's move on to the next bit. So we've done this block of stuff. Now we're connecting to the instance and installing Apache. So this is a really exciting part. Follow the steps in connect to your Linux instance. Okay, let's go to this one. Connection options. I'm using Mac OS, so I can just use SSH in the terminal. You can use PuTTY if you're on Windows, or you can actually access it directly in the console. So this is our instance here, right? we can go to connect and actually use EC2 Instance Connect to connect on. Look at this, it brings up a little terminal in the browser, which is really awesome. That's the easiest way. But seeing as that's clearly not working, let's go for the SSH client option. I'm going to bring up let's bring up a new window for my terminal. And we will put, let me put this up here, this down here. Okay, really running out of space on my screen, but we can live with that. Open an SSH client. So I've just got SSH on the command line. Yeah, that's all fine. And then we're going to type, find our key pair. So let's go cd dev / what do we call it? MySQL and AWS. Yeah, there's the key pair I made, my private key file. And then we'll go chmod. That changes the permissions on the file. So you can see before there was public read access. Now it's much more restricted. And that's just a requirement for SSH. We can now copy this command, and the user is EC2 user. That's the default for the AMI. So if we connect with that, we'll say yes. And perfect. We're now connected to the EC2 instance that we made, which is really fantastic, the remote machine. Now that we're here, we can head back to second step. So we've connected to the instance. We're here, you know, who am I? ls. Right, I'm on my remote machine, which is brilliant. We can get the latest bug fixes and security updates. So we'll do a sudo yum update. I'm actually going to skip off the -y because I want to be able to approve that manually. Saying here it's going to upgrade and install one package. So we'll say yes, that's okay. I'm running out of water here. You have to excuse me for a minute while I refill. Okay, looks like that was successful. Now we're going to go ahead and install PHP stuff. Now this time, I'm actually just going to copy this command and paste it in. So sudo Amazon Linux Extras. This is a utility that comes on Amazon Linux machines to help you install stuff. And we're going to install PHP. And basically, let's go ahead and run that. If you receive an error stating Amazon Linux Extras command not found, then it wasn't launched using Amazon Linux 2. The good news is we did not get that error, and I'm confident that we did launch using Amazon Linux 2, so we can skip over that one. And now we need to install Apache. So we've done PHP. Let's do this one. Actually, I'm going to type it out. The best way to learn is by typing it out. So sudo yum install -yes httpd. And that's Apache. Okay. Now we need to start the server. Sudo systemctl start httpd. Okay. You can test that your web server is properly installed and started. To do this, enter the public domain name, the DNS name of the EC2 instance. So that was this, right? So if we open that in a new tab, test page, look at that. We've now got our web server up and running. This is super exciting. Now we can move on to the next stuff. This is now live, so we can configure the rest of our web server. We can skip over this, and it says here the Apache test page, which is this one, only appears when there's no content in the document root directory var www.html. After you add content, your content appears at the DNS. So should we actually give that a quick go? If we go to cd/var www.html, there's nothing here. And we go, let's go nano index.html, and we'll go h1 hello world. Write that out. Fantastic. Let's quit that. Sudo nano index.html. Okay. Reload. That's it. That's our page. We've now got a web server up and running. So we're making good progress. I'm going to double check our database instance, see how that's doing. That is available, so that looks like it's rebooted as well. Now we've got these two separate things. We've got our database instance and our web server. We just got to hook them together and actually put in our application. So we've done that. And the next one is configure the web server to start with each system boot. So let's go sudo systemctl enable httpd. Okay. Allow EC2 user to manage files in the default root directory. This is exactly the issue I just faced, but I didn't have permission. Modify the ownership and permissions of the var www directory. So in this tutorial, we'll add a group, and then we'll give that group ownership of this directory with right permissions. So let's go sudo group add www. We've made a group now, and we'll go sudo user mod -a-g www ec2 user. Log out to refresh your permissions. So let's do an exit, quit the SSH session, and then reconnect. Log back in again, verify it exists with groups. Yep, there it is. Change the group ownership of the var www directory and its contents to the www group. Okay, we'll go sudo change group recursive www. Nice. Change the directory permissions of var www and its subdirectories to add group right permissions and set the group ID on subdirectories created in the future. Wow. Whew. Let's go sudo chmod 2775 var www. Find var www -type d -exec sudo chmod 2775. There's some funky stuff on the end. You should never blindly run commands without knowing what they're doing, but that's exactly what I just did. Recursively change the permissions, so we go find var www -type f -exec sudo chmod being 0664. The end of it I can't see. I'm willing to bet it's just that same thing again. Yeah. Let's go. So permissions are now set up correctly. Connect your Apache web server to your database instance. Here we go. This is the good meaty stuff. To add content to the web server that connects to the instance, go to var www, create a new subdirectory named inc, make the inc cd inc, and within inc we're going to make a file called dbinfo.inc, nanodbinfo.inc. Add the following contents to the dbinfo.inc file. So here, database instance endpoint is your instance endpoint without the port. Master password is the password we chose earlier. We recommend placing the username and password information in a folder that isn't part of the document root. Okay, let's copy that and we'll paste that into here. And then we can get all the info we need here from RDS. So if we click on this instance, we need the endpoint, which is here. So let's do this. I do wonder what the IP address of this machine is. Can we see that on here somewhere? Maybe we could do NS lookup. Yeah, so the DNS, the name actually resolves to this internal IP address. And this is what we did earlier when we set up the private subnets and stuff like that. So essentially it means the database is only accessible by the web server. So I have zero qualms about anybody, for example, watching this or anybody on the internet being able to access my database because it's on a private IP address. It's not actually public facing. You would need to compromise this EC2 instance in order to be able to get to it. So that's our server. Our user was tutorial user. Password, I have no shame in saying that for the purpose of the tutorial, my password was password123. And I think I didn't call it sample, did I? I gave it like sample DB, something like that. I don't think I can actually see that here. But I'm just going to hope for the best and think it was sample DB. Save and close. So we'll do a write and quit. Change the directory to HTML. So I go cd HTML. Oop. Yeah. And then here is our index.html file that I need. I can probably delete that one. That's rm index. And instead, we're going to make a file called, they're calling it samplepage.php. So let's do the same thing. They said, here we recommend placing the username and password in a place that isn't part of the document root. Now let's go ahead. I said I like to copy stuff out by hand, but this is a pretty hefty block. So we'll just copy this entire thing, paste that in. And then does it say we need to change anything in here? I don't think we do. We're doing some table stuff. We've got a simple page with some tables and forms on it. Yeah, and then the include is where we're including that database file, like the config file we just set up username and password in. So write that file, scroll down all this, save and close, verify your web service successfully connects to your database instance by opening a web browser and browsing to endpoint/samplepage.php. So that's this endpoint /samplepage.php sample page. Nice. I think we're nearly where we want to be, which is amazing. We can use this page to add data to our instance. So for example, name is Robbie AW, address is Major League Hacking USA. Everybody knows where that is. So we'll hit add data. And now this is here in the database, which is really exciting to see. Now, what I would like to do is use SQL Pro or MySQL Workbench or something like that to connect to the database. But because of how it's configured, it's not publicly accessible, like I said earlier. The DNS name for the database just resolves to a private IP address. What that means is only devices within the subnet can actually access the database. It can't be accessed by the public internet. Now that's done, what else have we got here? To verify the data was inserted in the table, you can install MySQL on the EC2 instance, connect the database instance, and create the table. We've got a few minutes left, so let's go ahead and give that one a go as well. I'm just going to blindly guess. Sudo yum install MySQL. Oh, it's already installed. If I do MySQL. MySQL, I can never remember the way you need to connect to it. Wow, so we got MySQL. Yeah, let's just go for it. MySQL -u is tutorial user. -p says we're going to enter a password. And then it's whatever that long host name was. We could probably use the IP address as well, but let's go with the host name. The endpoint. Can't connect to local MySQL server 3 socket. I do not know what that means. What does Google say? This is exactly the issue we're facing. Is MySQL running? Maybe. Is it MySQL or is it MySQL admin that we need? Is that what I'm getting wrong? Am I running the wrong application entirely? Like -h or something? This is what happens when you just kind of blindly guess the the syntax for actually running the program. Right. How to connect MySQL on command line. MySQL, okay, let's do this. MySQL -h is that host name. -u is tutorial user. -p will specify the password. Oh, then we need the database name as well. SampleDB. Aha, look at this. We're now into MySQL. I can do a show databases. Perfect. Let's say use SampleDB. List tables, is that what it is? Show tables. Right, employees. Let's go select star from employees. There is the employee that that I entered using the console. So this right here is proof that we're able to access our database, which is really, really brilliant. this is our application. I'm not sure what else we can do to make this better, but what we have managed to do is we've got an RDS instance up. We're doing it properly with VPCs and security groups, so the database is not public facing. We've got an EC2 instance with a very simple web application on that allows us to interact with the database. And I can go hello world, and that's here as well. And if I do select staff or employees, that's now here. I could do, is it delete? Let's just do delete staff from employees. Or is it drop employees? Let's go for it. Nope. Drop table. Oh, it's drop table. It's nice. So that's now an empty table. Test 1, 2, 3. That's there again. So we're able to interact with our database using the web client or using a MySQL client on our EC2 instance. So that's really, really fantastic. I guess the final step really is, firstly, to make sure your database instance is secure as possible, verify that sources outside the VPC can't connect to your instance. And we've already seen that, right? Like this is our endpoint. And if we do an NS lookup, which gets us the IP address, it's a 10. IP address, which is just not accessible. Like if I do ping 10.0.0, 138, it's like it just can't do it. So that's great. Our database is nice and secure. And after you finish testing your web server and your database, you should delete your database instance and your EC2 instance. So that's the final step for us to do together here. I'll just exit out of MySQL and out of SSH, and we'll go ahead and sadly close all of this down because we don't want to get billed until the end of time. So we'll go ahead and delete the database. You don't need a final snapshot. We acknowledge this. I mean, we did this earlier, right? We'll click delete me. And we'll also, sadly, close down our instance. We're going to go for actions, instance state rather, and we'll terminate it. Rest in peace. So that's deleting. This one's shutting down. And that we created a database using AWS, and we also created a web server and connected that to a database. Do make sure you head to the 2 URLs on the screen at the minute. So that's hackp.ac/March challenges, and go ahead and make sure you check in. And then same for hackp.ac/MySQL on AWS. Make sure you check in there as well. I hope you found this session useful. Our web server is now sadly terminated, and I suspect our database will probably be the same if it's not done yet. Looks like it's gone. It's still deleting. It takes a few minutes. Thank you so much for joining and for following along. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you folks, and I will catch you later. Bye-bye.